Hey everyone, and welcome back to Test Walkthroughs. Today we're going to be going over the Writing and Language Test portion of the March 2021 SAT exam. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comment section below of the video. And if you want to go over any particular question, again, leave your comments and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, let's start with number one. So when I look at number one, I'm going to give you guys a hint over here. When I look at number one, the first thing that I notice is that all of the answers over here are answers that have to do with verbs. So whenever I see an answer choices like this on the SAT, I try to first narrow everything down between either singular and plural. So if you look at the verb in answer choice A, illuminates, because the verb ends with an S, this is going to be singular. Answer choice B, because it's illuminates with no S, it's going to be plural. R is an indication of plural. Have. Now, have is going to be a present perfect tense. And on the SAT, whenever you have the word have in front of a verb, okay, they're usually going for the plural format. So that means that in answer choice D, it's also going to be plural. Now, this trick usually works around like 99% of the time. So you pick the answer that is going to be different from all the rest. So in this case, for number one, the answer choice should be A. To do this properly, what you should do is to go back to see what illuminates. So what actually acts upon the verb. So if you go back and look for the subject, if we read it, and I do highly actually read this. This is just me like going through this really quickly, but let's just read the sentence first. It says, plant pollinating insects are essential to the reproductive process of many flowering plants, but the number of these insects are declining around the world. Interestingly, a 2017 ecological study led by Dr. Eva Knopp suggests that artificial lighting, so what we have here is the subject, artificial lighting. Artificial lighting, the modern convenience that illuminates many streets. So what illuminates many streets is the artificial lighting. And artificial lighting is singular. It's not artificial lightings with an S. It's just artificial lighting. So if you could take a look at this, then it looks like our trick did work. It should be artificial lighting illuminates many streets, storefronts, and athletic fields, may be contributing to the decline of these organisms. So for number one is A. Number two. Daytime pollinators, such as bees and butterflies, have well-documented threats. So Dr. Knopp's team sought to investigate a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators, artificial light. Okay, so now they're trying to describe what is the threat to the pollinators. So now usually what you do in this particular case is that you have a full sentence. So you have a comma so, indicating an independent sentence that comes after the word so. Dr. Knopp's team sought to investigate a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators. So this is a full sentence, okay? So after the full sentence, you have a word, or you have a description, or you have some kind of detail that describes what it is. It's not a full sentence in itself. So in order to appropriately do that, you would use a colon. The answer choice for 2 should be B. So you use a colon whenever you're trying to use either one word or two words, or just a description. Okay, description, I should spell that properly. Or some type of description that tries to describe the previous sentence in some way. So in this case, number 2, the answer should be B. Because artificial light is a description of what is a threat, a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators. All right, so let's look at number 3. To do so, the team located samples of the thistle plant Cirsium oleraceum, which is pollinated by insects, in mountain meadows that are ordinarily dark at night. Before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to... Okay, so they're covering them to prevent something from happening. So 3 should be C. To prevent visits from pollinators. However, others were left unbagged. The scientists measured how much fruit each plant produced over the course of its life cycle. All right, so in order to do 4, we need to see what is the relationship between the first clause and the second clause. And when I say the first clause, I mean before the word however in the answer choice here. So this is the no change version. And as you can see, this is like however here, right? And the other ones are like while, meanwhile, and so that. So we're trying to look for a transitional word. So let's see what happens in the context. It says, before the plant's farm began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to prevent visits from pollinators. Others were left unbagged. Okay, so it looks like they're trying to do some kind of a contrast over here. Okay, and they're trying to say that something happened at the same time. Okay, so something happened at the same time, right? So they're saying that these two things happened at the same time. Some plants were covered and others were not covered. So if some things were happening at the same time, then the answer should be B. So some bags were covered while other plants were left unbagged. Yeah, so some plants were bagged and other were unbagged. Number 5, the scientists measured how much fruit each plant produced over the course of its life cycle. So number 5, this is a replacement. They want to add a sentence in here. So it says half the plants in each category were then illuminated during the nighttime hours. Okay, so this kind of gives a hint about the cycle in which this answer or this experiment was being done in. So let's take a look. It says half of the plants in each category were then illuminated during the nighttime hours. So they want to place this sentence. Let's take a look at each one. Daytime pollen such as bees and butterflies have well-documented threats. Okay. To do so, the team located the sample of the thistle plants, which pollinate by insects in mountain meadows that are ordinarily dark at night. And then 3 says, before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to prevent visits from pollinators, however, left unbagged. Okay, so the answer choice here should be C because they're describing what they're doing to the plants. So before the plant's flowering began, some were covered and others were not covered. And then half the plants in each of those categories. What categories? Well, the categories of bagged versus unbagged, right? Okay, were then illuminated during the nighttime hours. And then the scientists measure how much fruit each plant produced over the course of its life cycle. All right, number 6. Whereas the unbagged plant's fruit production changed significantly with light exposure, the bagged plants saw no such effect. Which choice most effectively combines the sentences at the underlined portion? All right, so let's read this. It says, the bagged plants couldn't be visited by pollinators. Because of that fact, the bagged plants self-fertilize and thus average only about something. Okay, so when you're doing this kind of a sentence, you want to be able to pick an answer that probably is 1, prioritize the shortest answer. Okay, and then 2, you want to be able to prioritize any answers that are combining with the least amount of punctuation. Least punctuation. Okay? You want to be able to effectively combine. So that generally means that on the SAT, you want to pick the shortest answers and you want to pick things that use commas or semicolons or whatnot in the most efficient way. You don't want to be using commas and semicolons and any other forms of punctuation everywhere. You want to try to use it the least amount possible. So just from looking at the format of the answers, I'm very inclined to either pick C or D at this point. Okay, because why? They're relatively shorter than A and B, and they're basically just not as wordy, right? So let's take a look at C and D first. So if we look at C, it says the pollinators couldn't visit the bagged plants, comma, and those plants self-fertilize and thus average only about something. And then D says because they couldn't be visited by pollinators, the bagged plants self-fertilized. Okay, so now between C and D, right? C and D have different meanings. C has the word "and" in it, which means that they're trying to talk about two different thoughts. But D should be the answer because they have the word "because" in here. So it's an explanation. And as an explanation, it stays true with the original meaning of the sentences. So you want to pick answer choice D because one, it's the shortest, and two, it follows the same exact idea that they had originally intended. Now, if we look at the other answer choices A and B, first of all, let's look at B. Because of the word being, there's a high probability. Whenever you see the word being, and this happened on old SAT exams too. When I say old SAT exams, I mean like any exams like before the year like 2000, okay? I'm a pretty old dude, so I done SAT exams before the year 2000. And the rule that we always learned was that being is always wrong. Especially if being is never repeated anywhere else in the passage or in that particular answer, being has a high probability of being wrong, so just cross it out. And then A says the bag plants couldn't be visited by pollinators, comma, so the lack of pollinators meant. So is already a definition for meant, so you don't pick A. It's also too long. So out of all the answers here, 6 should be D. Number 7. Plants self-fertilize and thus averaged about 15 fruits per plant in dark size, but 85 fruits per plant in illuminate. All right, so for number 7, we have to look at all the accurate information in the graph. So let's see what the graph looks like. So what do we compare right now? 15 fruits per plant in dark, but 85 in plant. B says 15 fruits per plant where they were in dark sites, or 20 fruits per plant in dark sites. All right, so let's take a look at the information. So we have dark sites. So we have bag plants, and they were talking about dark sites, illuminate sites. So it looks like the bag plants, they have about a little bit over 15. And the unbagged and the dark site have about 90. And they're almost about the same. Let's see what the answer choices give us. And thus, okay, because it says because they couldn't be visited by pollinators, the bag plants self-fertilize and thus averaged about 15 fruits per plant in dark sites and 85 fruits per plant in the illuminated, or 15 fruits per plant whether they were in dark sites or illuminated sites, 20 fruits, 80 fruits, 100, and so on. All right, so let's take a look what they got. So in dark sites, the bag plants produced 15, almost 20, and unbagged, they produced 90, and this one was about 80. So number 7 says, on the other hand, unbagged plants in dark produce an average of 90 fruits per plant, whereas bagged plants, no, I'm sorry, I did number 8 over here, number 7, because the bagged plants self-fertilize and thus average only about 15 fruits per plant, but 85 fruits in illuminated sites. Okay, so if you look at this, yeah, so bag plants only produce around 15 or a little bit over 15, whether they were illuminated or in dark sites. Okay, so the answer here for number 7 should be B, So 15 fruits per plant, whether they are in dark sites or if they are in illuminated ones. And that makes sense because right here, bag plants, where they are in the dark or where they're illuminated, they only produced around 15 or a little bit more than that. All right, number 8. It says, on the other hand, unbagged plants from the dark sites produce an average of 90 fruits per plant. Whereas bag plants that we're supposed to produce an average of 78 fruits per plant. Okay, so we're looking for what produces 78 fruits per plant. So if we look at this over here, 78 looks like it should be this one. And that will be unbagged illuminated. So which one shows unbagged illuminated? So for number 8, the answer choice should be C. All right, number 9. Let's go back and actually read it again. So number 9, producing an average of 78 fruits per plant, a 13% decline in fruit production for plants that are illuminated at night. From these results, the researchers concluded that nocturnal pollinators were avoiding the unbagged plants in the illuminated sites, which affected the overall yield of the plants. All right, so let's see. Which are the best transition to the paragraph that follows? All right, so to do this one, we actually have to read the next paragraph. So let's see what the next paragraph speaks about. The scientists also found that the decline in nighttime pollination visits coincide with the decline of daytime pollinators. The precise cause for this dual decline was unclear. One possibility is that the plants were less nourishing to daytime pollinators when no longer visited by nighttime pollinators. Whereas the reason artificial illumination clearly has adverse effects on plant pollination and increased presence of artificial proposed for biodiversity, urgent measures must be taken. Okay, so they're focusing a lot about pollinators. And then at the beginning over here, if you want to transition, they seem to be talking a lot about how the effects of daytime pollinators is also included. So, okay, let's take a look at the answer choices. It says, which choice provides the best transition? So I underlined a lot of the keywords over here with daytime pollinators. Nocturnal, we're avoiding the unbagged plants in the illuminated sites. And it looks like, let me see, pollinator regularly. Although researchers hope to investigate these results further, the daytime pollinators were not making up for the loss. All right, so answer choice, it looks like answer choice should be D for number 9, because in the next paragraph, they talk about how it was less nourishing to the daytime pollinators. Also, decline of visits with the daytime pollinators. So they're basically linking up how like there is a decline in the daytime pollinators, and because of this, there was also a loss in the plants, I guess, being pollinated. Okay, so let's take a look at number 10. The scientists also found that the decline in the nighttime pollination visits coincided with a decline in visits from daytime pollinators. Okay, so for number 10, the answer should be coincided. So this is a vocabulary question. They're asking about what's the best way. They say that one works with the other at the same time. So let's just say that it was coincided. They both happened at the same time. Number 11, whatever the reason, artificial illumination clearly has adverse effects on plant pollination. And the increasing presence of the answer for number 11 should be C. You have the presence of artificial light. So that's an idiomatic phrase. And actually, we're kind of done with the first passage. You could read the rest if you want to, but this question 11, usually the last question in the passage will ask some kind of main idea. So it kind of forces you to read everything else. But in this case, it kind of didn't. So you just need to pick the right vocabulary for number 11. All right, moving on to number 12. Okay, so let's do the next passage. Benefits of dress code flexibility. Okay, so let's try this. It says, in July of 2016, the coffee shop chain Starbucks instituted a new policy to relax its dress code. The decision, allowing employees to customize their previously uniform looks with such accessories as hats and cuttable socks, reflects workplaces across the United States reflects a new trend in or reflects a new national trend. Okay, so the answer for number 12 should be B. So what they're trying to do here is, usually what you should do is you should pick the shortest answer. In this case, there's something else that's written over here in the answer choices, right? And this idea is that it's a trend, okay? So in all the other answer choices, they also included trends, but then they wrote some other unnecessary words. So for example, in answer choice C, you have a tendency, okay? So a tendency is kind of like a trend. So it's repetitive. You don't need answer choice C and writing the word tendency. Answer choice D is reflective of a new national trend. You don't need a reflective of a new national trend because they already kind of say that it's in the United States as well. Okay, so we already know that's national. So 12 should be B. From retail, let's do number 13. From retail services to large corporate offices, employers are finding that flexible dress codes can make a company more attractive to potential workers, boosting morale among current employees. Okay. So let's see what they're trying to do here. So again, I'll usually try to pick the shortest answer without any like complicated punctuation. So I'm leaning towards answer choice D. I mean, you have the semicolon over here, but here's another rule, guys. This is not necessarily a hard rule, but I'm going to give you a hint. Whenever you see a semicolon and then a verb ending in ing after the semicolon, this is usually wrong, okay? The reason why is because when you do a semicolon, you're trying to introduce a new set of independent sentences after the semicolon, but they usually do not start a complete independent clause using an ing verb at the beginning, because that's the indication of a modifying clause. So you don't want to do a construction of semicolon and then verb ing to start a new sentence. Okay, that's not how it usually works. So on the SAT, this is a big hint that that answer is already wrong. So I'm already thinking A is probably wrong. For that same reason, I think also C should be wrong, because again, if you put a period, you're ending the sentence and you shouldn't be starting a new sentence with the word and. If you want to do that, what you want to do is you want to use comma and then the word and to start a new sentence. This is the equivalent of a period unless you're doing a list of items. Okay, so if you see comma and, it's the equivalent of the period, which is also the equivalent of a semicolon. Okay, so if you see any of these three choices, you can kind of eliminate them altogether. And then B, because of, again, the wordiness additionally, and then you have a comma pronoun, which is, again, also kind of a big hint that something's wrong. Whenever you see a comma pronoun, that's also a big hint that something's wrong. So 13, you can kind of eliminate everything. And again, D is also the shortest answer. Let's see if it works. Employers are finding that flexible dress codes can make a company more attractive to potential workers and boost morale. Okay, so you make a company more attractive and you boost morale. Okay, you boost morale. So there's a parallelism here. Two verbs in the same format, make and boost. Okay, so you have make and you boost. And the both verbs in the same format. The answer should be D for number 13. Number 14. There are a number of reasons why job applicants might favor companies that allow for some degree of flexibility in workplace attire. Having the option to dress casually can mean greater physical comfort. Also, being able to personalize otherwise identical uniforms with unique flourishes can enhance happiness by allowing them. So again, if I look at number 14 here, just looking at the answer choices, if you have a choice either between picking answers that are specific with nouns versus answers that are pronouns, you probably want to pick the answers that have specific nouns. This is the type of questions that's asking you to provide more details. So usually the answer with more details is going to be used over any answers that contain less details. So now you're stuck between either employees or flourishes. So let's see what they are trying to talk about. There's also being able to personalize otherwise identical uniforms with unique flourishes can enhance happiness by allowing who to retain a greater sense of personal who has a greater sense of personal identity, who can retain a greater sense of personal identity? Is it flourishes or is it employees? So the answer here should be employees because it's the type of person or the people that will be able to retain a greater sense of personal identity. All right, 15. So now for 15, I see possessive. So if you look at just the answer choices, I am already eliminating B, I'm eliminating D, because you can either say it's the individuals, which is more than one, so this is plural, and then a single individual, and this is singular, motives. So what we want to do here now is to look at A and C as our answer choices and look to see what are we referring to. So are individuals, in this case, plural individuals, more than one individual, or is it just one individual? So individuals' motives may vary, but job recruiters are finding that many potential employees do indeed share a preference for flexible dress codes, and embracing this brand could help companies attract a wider range of talent. All right, so they're referring to potential employees. So employees here is plural, which means that we should pick a plural answer to refer to those individuals, all those individuals. So 15 here should be A. 16. According to a 2016 study, essentially none. Okay, so we have to look at the graph over here. The writer wants to set up the information that follows in the sentence with accurate interpretation of the data from the table. Which one accomplishes this goal? According to a 2016 study, so this is the 2016 study, something of those surveyed wanted to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code. All right, so where's the one that has a relaxed dress code? Formal, casual or no dress code. Okay. A company doesn't have impact my decision here. So a survey wanted to employ by a company with a relaxed dress code. 31% responded that they prefer a company with a business casual dress code, and a further 27%. So they talked about this. They talked about this. They prefer a casual dress code or no dress code at all. Okay. Employed by a company with a relaxed... Okay, so essentially none of those survey ones to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code. Okay, so the ones that had a relaxed dress code, that would be the ones that are either these two, right? Yeah, so that means that this is about more than half, because if you do 31 plus 27, that's more than half of the company. So 16 should be D. 17. 27% that you prefer casual dress code or no dress code. Okay, at this point, the writer is considering adding the following sentence based on the information from the table. Only 18% preferred a more formal dress code. I think that you should include this because it kind of emphasizes that most people want casual, and by saying that only 18%, it kind of emphasizes the fact that very few people want a formal dress code. Let's take a look. Yes, because it provides additional evidence that supports the... Yeah, so I think the answer here for 17 should be A. So even though it talks about the other side, it's actually a benefit here because it talks about how only 18%. The key word is only. And so since this article seems to be arguing about how we should be maintaining casual dress code, by saying that only 18% prefer formal, it adds emphasis to the author's argument about implementing casual dress code. All right, number 18. It says, in addition to making companies more appealing to potential employees, introduce the main idea of this paragraph. All right, so to do this one, we actually have to read what they're trying to do in the paragraph. So let's read the rest of the paragraph first. It says, when the accounting firm CHLLP asked workers what changes they would like to see in the workplace, and workers said that dressing casually would help them most with being comfortable, being engaged, and being productive. Okay. The firm started allowing workers to wear jeans and relatively casual attire, and response from employees were overwhelmingly positive. With our change in dress, the level of excitement and feedback from our people has been really phenomenal, Wood said. Okay, so in number 18, the answer here seems to be about how the companies are creating different dress codes. So it looks like they're speaking about instituting flexible dress codes. can improve in current employee morale. And they talked about employee morale here at the end. So 18 here should be D. 19. When the accounting firm asks workers what they like to see in the workplace. Okay, so 19 here should be B. Because the reason is when they have the word win here, and this is a good hint for you guys, okay? Whenever there's a word win at the beginning of the sentence, that means that that sentence is now a dependent clause. And when it's a dependent clause, that means that it ends with a comma, and then you have a new sentence that starts. Okay, and you usually just go straight into the subject. So you have a dependent clause. So the construction goes like this. You go when, something, 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 comma, and then you have a noun. Okay, do not include any words like and or however or whatnot. It should just be when you have the dependent clause. And then after the dependent clause, you have the start of an independent clause, starting with a noun. Okay? This is a very powerful method. Make sure that you study this idea and get it down in your head, and then you'll be able to knock out some of these answers really quickly. So let's take a look. So it says when, and then you have a comma at the end of it, no other punctuation. The answer here should be B. Now, the other thing that I can also show you here, guys, is a little bit of a trick. So if you look at number 19 and look at the answer choices, you have a comma and in answer choice A. Comma and. So answer choice A, you have a comma and. Answer choice C, you have a semicolon. So A and C basically do the same thing, because both of these answer choices end the sentence and start a new one. And it's because they both do the same thing, essentially, you can cross them both out. Because one can replace the other, and there's no special need for one over the other. And then, you can use my trick again to go back and look to see if there's like a modifier at the beginning. And since there is with the when dependent clause, the answer for 19 should be B. All right, number 20. And workers said that dressing casual would help them most with... Okay, so now we have a quotation here. So if you do a quotation here, there should be no punctuation before the quotation unless it's the word says or said, or it has some kind of synonym with says or said. So if it said like, oh, Macbeth said, and then if it says that, then you have a comma, and then you put the quotation. Okay, so that's the only time where you will put quotation marks after a comma, is if it has like the word said, says or said, or some other synonym that's similar to it. But in this case, it's the word with. So with is not a synonym of says or said. So therefore, it should be blank and just having a quotation mark around it. So that means that 20 should be B. 21. Of course, formal workplace attire is appropriate and even required in some contexts. All right, so the answer here as a vocab question is that they're saying formal attire in some cases can be appropriate. The answer choice should be A. Admissible is some legal term about how evidence can be used in a trial. Unexceptional means not unimportant. It means unimportant. And genuine means real and yeah, so like not hidden behind anything. 22. For example, job interviews and client meetings often require professional clothing. However, in certain occupations, such as law enforcement, uniforms without personal embellishments are still necessary. Okay, so it looks like they're trying to reiterate a point. They're trying to add more detail about it. So if you look at it, it says, for example, job interviews and client meetings often require professional clothing. And they're trying to give more detail because they're saying, look, you still need to be more formal, so it should be furthermore. So you're trying to provide even more detail. It's not a contrast. If it was a contrast, they'll say, however, there are some places that don't require uniform. But they're saying such places such as law require uniforms. And they require uniforms without personal embellishments. So this is the answer here should be furthermore to provide further detail. When possible, though, companies should consider relaxing dress codes and allow flexibility, a move that is likely to benefit both employees and companies. All right, 23. So we'll look at the next passage now. It says the filter net Let's see. Is there any answers that we can already cross out? All right, so just again, this is another kind of like trick that I'm going to do just when looking at the answers here. Again, comma pronoun is usually wrong, so I'm going to cross that out. Semicolon and is always wrong, so that's always going to be out. And then they have two nouns next to each other, histories and then they. So this is also an error because they is a pronoun, history is a noun, and you don't include noun pronoun unless you actually just never do. So I think the answer then should be D because this is the only appropriate way to combine clauses together. I think they're trying to combine verbs over here. So without even reading it yet, let's see what they say now. They say search engines make it easy for us to keep up with current issues, but the information we find may not be as objective as it appears. Many search engines collect data from users such as location and search histories, comma, and use what they got. Yeah, so this is a non-essential clause. This can be crossed out. So it says many search engines collect data from users and use what they gather to filter the search results. So the answer here should be D. 24. This invisible customization may create what media CEO Ellie Pariser has termed a filter bubble, a biased worldview that is reinforced when it's consistently confirmed. Okay, so the answer for 24 should also be A. 24 should be A because you have a biased worldview that's reinforced when something is consistently confirmed. 25. It is important, especially with regard to political, that search engines make their filtering practices explicit. When search engines make them explicit. All right, so they have explicit, they want to combine it. So you only want to use the word explicit once. And let's see what they're trying to do. I think 25 should be C because it says when search engines make them explicit. So it's the same thought. So the idea is when they make them explicit so that users can be aware of potential biases. I think the answer should be C. Whereas is like opposite, contrasting is not contrasting. Which has a result is wordy, explicit, semicolon. This is again wordy, like too long. You want to go for the shortest answer most of the time. And if I had to choose between A and C, whereas is opposite though. We're not looking for opposition. We're looking for the same idea. It's like an explanation for something. So 25 is C. 26. When making important decisions, especially when those decisions are shared with friends of him on social media, which sets up the main argument of the passage. All right, so the main argument of the passage, let's read the title. It says the filtered net. Okay, that doesn't help us. Let's see what else it is. It is important, especially with regard to political issues. All right, so it looks like they're trying to talk about political issues. And it's saying that it's important with political issues. So they probably want to stress this idea about political issues. Let me see. Is there anything about politics here? 26. 26. It looks like it should be C because civic duties is the same as political issues. So I'm pretty confident that 26 should be C because civic is such as candidate selection and voter. Yeah, so it has voter opinion in it too. So 26 should be C. It's not going to be A because it's not just focused on friends and family on social media. It's not about misleading statistics, and it's not about the long-term. So this is too vague. Long-term effects may not be easy to measure. It doesn't go into specifics about the politics. So 26 is C. 27. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filtered results can lead to All right, so now here's another hint here too. This has like results can lead to. So usually in this kind of case, I would pick the answer that has the least amount of punctuation. Always try to test the answer that has the least punctuation first, okay? Because simpler is better, all right? And that's also the case in many times of the SAT test. So whenever you're in a situation where there's like lots of commas versus an answer choice with no commas, I would, if you had to guess, lean towards the answer choice that have actually no comma. And if you feel like there should be a pause somewhere, that's what most of my students tell me. There has to be a pause somewhere. Isn't there something that we can do with a comma? I would say most of the time, if you feel like there should be a pause, but there's an answer with no like comma there, I would pick the answer with no commas. So let's see. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filter results. What did the filter results do? The results can lead to political biases. There should be no punctuation there. So the answer for 27 should be D. In an experiment conducted before the 2014 general election in India, Epstein created a fake search engine and asked about 2,000 undecided voters to use it in search of candidates running for the office of prime minister. Voters were divided into 3 groups, and each group was presented with results favoring a different major political candidate. Participants whose searches favored a given candidate. Okay, so the answer here should be were, I think. Participants who favor, let me see. 28 should be, yes, it should be were, because they're saying participants. Now, I'm going to go through my trick here again, just so that it can help you out. So I kind of read through that quickly, but if I was doing this just for fun, I would label the answer choices. First, was is singular. Has been is singular because of the present perfect has. Were is plural. And then are is also plural. Okay, so in this particular case, we have 2 singulars and 2 plurals. Now, this doesn't happen that often. Okay, usually you're just going to have 1 singular, 3 plural, or 1 plural and 3 singular. So in this particular case, you actually have to go back and look at the noun. So in this case, we have participants. And participants who search favored a given candidate were. So they're talking about the participants, right? Now, are they participants who sort of favor? This is in the past or is this in the present? So is the participant who searched favored again a candidate were told more likely to report a positive view of the candidate than were participants. So you see here, there is parallelism already. Okay, so if this says were participants in other groups, this should also be were 12% more likely. 29. Okay, so it says, while there is no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew the results in favor of certain candidates or positions. So we have a while here, so that means that this should just end with a comma and make it simple. So that means 29 should be the answer choices A. And again, you get rid of anything else that has commas. And you also still have to include a comma, so it can't be C. 30. Filters based on users' browsing history. So are we speaking about one user or more than one user? I think in this particular case, we're talking about more than one user because they're saying based upon users. It's not saying based on the user. So you would pick the user for singular if you see the article the or a in front of it. But since we don't see that word, it has to be plural. So it should be users with an S at the end. So it's either B or it's D. So the user's browsing histories or user's browsing history. So it's not about something belonging to the histories. We're just talking about the user's browsing histories. The histories as a noun over here. So the answer for 30 should be D. 31 says, which choice provides the best transition from the previous paragraph to the information that follows? Okay, this possibility is especially troubling because most users think their searches display the full spectrum of perspectives on the issue. Okay, B says, the study therefore appears to contradict the idea. C says, election outcomes are nevertheless unaffected. And D says, search engine designers assume that. So what was said in the previous? 12% more likely to report a positive view that candidate participants in other groups, while there's no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew the results in favor of certain candidates or filters based on user browsing could produce similarly slanted results. All right, so I think, so in 31, the answer here should be A. Why? They're saying the possibility. And the possibility what? The possibility of producing similarly slanted results. So they're worried about these results, and the possibility of it happening is troubling because most users think their search display the full spectrum of perspectives on an issue. The vast majority of participants in Epstein's experiment, 99.3%, did not recognize the bias in their results. Politicians hope to counteract this. Let's see. But there are mitigating factors, and this finding was by no means atypical. This was subsequently reversed. I think they're trying to say that this finding was by no means atypical. They're trying to say that this finding is not special. Because again, they say, look what happens next. A 2012 study from Pew Research Center indicated that 66% of respondents believed that results obtained through a search engine present all available information. So they're saying that this result that was over here is not special because there was another survey that had similar ideas over here. So you want to say that it's not atypical. Or you're saying that it's not, yeah, it's not atypical. 33. Filtering is essential to search engines because the sheer volume of information on the internet makes it impossible to display more than a small portion of all relevant results. But in the case of political information, it is important for users to be aware of the existence of filters and of the factors that might bias results. If search engines publish this information by displaying a warning that results are selected based on user preference, for example, users would be better able to read political coverage online with appropriately critical eye and thus. Okay, so let's see what they're trying to say here. The writer is considering deleting the underlying phrase, adjusting the punctuation as needed should the phrase be kept or deleted. Okay, so let's see what they're trying. If search engines publish information by displaying a warning that results are selected based on user preferences, for example, users could be better able to read political coverage online with appropriately critical eye and thus base their opinion on fuller. Okay, so I think they should include it because it provides an example of what these websites could do, these search engines can do. Yeah, so yeah, I think 33 here should be B because they're trying to say that what these websites, these search engines can provide some kind of potential solution. All right. Okay, we're on to the new passage already. So this one could be the last hurrah. So let's get this done. So number 34. Let's see here. Based upon this. So again, I'm a big fan of picking ones with the least amount of punctuation. I might be picking A, but let's read through though. Maybe it could be D. Let me just read through first because a comma is also simple enough. These guys look a little bit complicated. But all right, let's say a 2015 study led by First People's Fund, an organization dedicated to supporting indigenous artists. Okay, so this is definitely a comma. Why is it a comma? Because this is a non-essential clause. It's a positive that describes what the fund is. Okay, so we call this an appositive. And the positive is the description that follows after a comma that describes the noun that came before it. And in this case, it says an organization. What's an organization? The First People's Fund. So therefore, you need a comma to offset those, and then you have the verb afterward with the word revealed. So if you read this regularly, it should be a 2015 study led by First People's Fund. Skip over the positive. Revealed that roughly 4 out of 10 households on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota had home businesses centered on arts or handicrafts. Okay, 35. Which choice provides the most effective transition from the previous sentence to the information that follows in this sentence? Okay, so let's see what was in the previous sentence. I'm going to read through the rest. This finding reflects the deeply rooted importance of art within the reservation of Olagla Lakota culture. However, the study also concluded that the vastness of the reservation limited local artists' ability to collaborate with one another, find mentors, and sell their art. Regardless of these discoveries, I think it should be in light of these results. So they're basically trying to say that, look, we had all of this information here. So this is evidence, right? So they had all of this evidence. And then because of all this evidence, they took action. So it says, in light of the study of these results, the First People's Fund worked with a group of organizations and supports to implement the plan for strengthening the creative economy of the reservation. All right, 36. The outcome of the organization's combined efforts. Okay, so again, let's go through this. Have is plural. Were is plural. Are is plural. Was is singular. 36 should be D, was, because this is the only one that's singular, and it's referring back to the outcome. Rolling Res Arts, a bus that would serve as a mobile space to support artistic collaboration and forge critical partnerships with local financial institutions, which best states one of the main points of this passage. Let me see. Local financial institutions create new commercial opportunities for artists in the area, provide access to computers, offer entrepreneurship classes for people living on the reservation. All right, so what were they trying to argue here? And the main points. So limited the ability to collaborate with one another, find mentors, and to sell their art. So they want to sell their art, plan for strengthening the creative economy. So that means that they're trying to find some way to improve the economy in there. They wanted to find some way for people to sell their art. So they're interested in commercial activities. Yeah, so 2037 should be commercial opportunities for artists in the area. And it's for the artists. It's not computers. It's not entrepreneurial classes for people on the reservation. It's specifically for the artists. And answer choice A is forge critical partners. It's not just about the financial institutions. It's about the artists trying to make money and supporting themselves in the community. Rolling Res Arts itself was a collaborative work of art by Oglala Lakota artist Donald Montelieu, a 2014 inductee in the South Dakota Hall of Fame. Why was this person important? Which provides information about Montelieu best supports the paragraph's discussion. I don't think about the Hall of Fame. A practitioner of traditional Plains art known as a ledger art. Okay, they talk about the Indian art here. An artist whose work was featured in galleries in New York. Well, I mean, they have artists. I'm not sure about New Mexico, Minnesota, and Arizona, though. A cover illustrated for so by Joseph Marshall III. I don't think they talk about Marshall III anywhere else here. Let me glance. I don't see anything about Marshall III. I don't think it's D. I don't think about the Hall of Fame. I think the answer here should be B then, because I don't know about ledger art yet. Did they talk about it? He created a lavish design for the bus. The design intended for that had vivid pictograms by narrative scenes of ledger art. Okay, so it should be that answer. 38 should be B because they mentioned ledger art later on. Let's look at number 39. He created a lavish design for the bus. The design intended for the sides of the bus had vivid pictograms of running buffalo. So this looks like it's supposed to be combining sentences again. Yeah, and it is. To create a lavish design on the bus, the sides of which would include... okay, that sounds a little bit wordy, which would include... They're talking about the past. Sides of the bus with vivid pictograms of running buffalo inspired. It sounds like it could be B just because it's short enough. The bus's sides and this design feature running buffalo and vivid pictograms suggested. So this is a little bit wordy. The bus's side. It should be sides of the bus, I think. Let me see. D. Sides of the bus. Okay, we have that. In these places would be vivid pictograms. All right, so this is also passive. It should be, and this design featured running buffalo in vivid pictogram form suggested something. So I think 39 should be C. Let me check though. Maybe not. Let me see. 39. Let me do this again. Sides of the bus with vivid pictogram. This is a little bit long though. No, it's not. It's not bus's side. Okay, it's not this one. All right. It should be sides of the bus with vivid pictograms of buffalo inspired. So let me read through it again. It says this design intended for the side of the bus had vivid pictograms of buffalo inspired by narrative scenes of ledger art. Okay, so it should be he created a lavish design for the sides of the bus. Okay, yeah. So he created a lavish design for the sides of the bus. Because A says bus and bus's sides, it should be the sides of the bus with vivid pictograms. So they created the design for the sides of the bus. And what about these sides? With vivid pictograms of running buffalo inspired. So 39 should be B. It's not the bus's sides. And then they say, and this design. So this is wordy here. Feature running buffalo and vivid. Yeah. So 39 over here should be B. Let's take a look at number 4D. After Monte produced drawings of the design, an Oglala Lakota graphic artist adapted them to fit the bus, helping transform its exterior into a brilliant traveling canvas. Okay, so what is the object in this sentence? So let's go through each of these again. We have it's, and most of the time, oh yeah, here's the other hint that I want to give you guys, okay? Whenever you see the word it's, most of the time it's going to be correct, especially if you're having it as the singular answer, because a lot of people get confused between ITS and ITS. with the apostrophe. So this over here represents it is or it was. But most of the time people mistake this for a possessive form, whereas the possessive is its with no apostrophe. So the answer usually is going to be that one if it appears. Let's try to see what we're referring back to. We're referring to the bus's exterior. So it's a singular bus. So it's. The answer for 40 should be A. If you try to follow this one, this is singular, this is plural, this is singular, this is singular. This is one of the cases where it kind of breaks the rule over here, where you're supposed to pick the odd one out, but in this case it's not. You have to go back and really check this particular one. But again, most of the time, because it's the rule of the word it's. All right, 41. With the eye-catching collaboration complete, the bus was ready to begin journeying across the far-flung communities of the reservation. The bus's versatile interior allows artists to work together on projects, study with mentors, and even set up bank accounts to help grow their business, art as business. The bus also hosts a gift shop whose manager buys works on site to sell elsewhere along the bus's travels, enhancing artists' ability to benefit financially from their art. Okay, so this one is basically saying like it provides a service, it makes it better, it provides something that can make the artist's life better. It should be enhancing the artist's ability to benefit financially from the art. Local artists and rancher Tony Richards. Okay, so this is a rule, guys. The answer for number 42 should be B. And the reason why is whenever you include a person's like job title right before their names, it's going to be clear. There's going to be no punctuation that happens before it. So one way that I could say this is, let's say I could say former Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. Okay, so if you notice, when I wrote former Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, I do not include any punctuation like commas or anything before the person's name. It should just be completely one thing together. And this happens all the time in the test. You have local artist and rancher. That is the vocation. That is the job that Tony Richards has. That's how he identifies. So therefore, the answer here should be B. All right. 43 should be D. Okay, now, why did I know that? Because I saw the word while. Remember that trick, guys? You see while, and then something, something, something. There should be a comma with no other punctuation. A, B, and C should be gone. So while the organization behind the project ultimately aimed to open a permanent art space and gallery on the reservation to serve as a fixed cultural hub, comma, the art in motion of Rolling Res Arts will continue. All right, so let's see. It says the writer wants to incorporate, for number 44, the writer wants to incorporate a direct quotation onto a conclusion that summarizes and reflects upon the main idea of the passage. What choice best accomplishes? So it should include something about the Lakota people using their art to both commercially and to culturally help the people, I think. Let's see. As Warren Gus Yellow Hair, an artist, what I do is contact some of the established art and utilize some of their skills. I don't think that's it. Jeremy Stab, the program manager of First People Fund, said part of the signal is thinking about asset building. That is determining how to get residents comfortable with banking. I don't think it's about banking. Brandy Mann, the former program manager, said Rolling Res provides access to capital and addresses other needs in community. It passes through the space where the community resides, which is beautiful to think about. So this is more of like the happy idea of like helping artists in the community. I think it could be C. Lord, the president of First People, we are on we had a conversation about doing something on wheels. This is not, I think, what they're trying to reiterate. It was this idea of using a space that brings the community together. So 44, the answer should be C. Okay, guys, so that's the conclusion of the writing and language part of the March 2021 SAT exam. If you have, again, many more comments or questions about anything that I talked about here today, please feel free to leave it in the comment section below. And everyone, happy test taking. Hope you do well on the coming up exams. Good luck, everyone. Thank you very much.